Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. It is August 19th, 2022. Our agenda this morning, we'll start out with success stories. We'll then go to have everybody put their 30-second introductions into the chat window. We'll then hear from our committee reports, and then we will have our main event at about the top of the hour. For those on Zoom, please feel free to enter any questions you have into the chat window. For those watching on Facebook right now, please just enter your questions into the comment field. We're monitoring both feeds. We'll be sure to get those questions answered for you. Please note this event is being recorded and is currently live on Facebook. The recording will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel for others to view in the future. By participating in this event, you give consent for your name and picture to appear. Please note that any comments you put in the Zoom chat window will not appear in the recording. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Jeff Morris. Since 2007, I've been facilitating and leading the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. This group's been around since the late 1990s. I took it over in 2007 when the prior leader got a job and said, who wants to take over? And I think I scratched my face. He said, okay, Jeff, you're it. So I've been doing this ever since that time. In 2008, I saw a need in the Dallas-Fort Worth area to create a website called careerdfw.org, a website to put everything you need to know about your job search in one place for those job seekers in Dallas. In 2012, I launched a second website, careerusa.org, to help those around the United States. I've written a book called What I've Learned About Your Job Search That You May Not Know. It is available on Amazon, or I usually have copies with me if you ever see me in person. And since 2017, I've been a member of the practice interview team, also known as the PIT crew, and you'll hear more about that in just a few moments. Well, we'd like to start the meeting off with good news, success stories. Do we have any landings out there? Any news anybody wants to share? You're welcome to unmute your mic and let us know. Going once, going twice?
Got one, Jeff.
Oh, yeah, Mark, please.
So Ann Bradstreet joined the PIT crew in the middle of June, and she was available to be a panelist one time in the last couple of months, and now she's landed with Unum. And that's all I know. I don't know what her title or role is going to be, but there you go, a landing at Unum Financial Services Insurance is where I know them mainly. So congratulations to Ann.
Great, great, great. Thank you very, very much. All right, thanks for announcing that. Anybody else? All right, well, let me move on here. Let's see here. What we'd like everybody to do now is, if you will, open up the chat window and put in your 30-second introductions. We'd like to know, put in your name, comma, phone number, comma, email address, comma, position you're looking for, comma, a couple, 2 or 3 target companies, and then hit the return key. And I will put all this out this afternoon in an email so that you can connect with everybody. You can also go through and look over that list. See if you know somebody who works at one of those places that you maybe have a contact at. Help other people who are on this call with us today. For those watching on Facebook, if you want to put your personal information in the chat window, I will go and delete it immediately after this event, so it won't be hanging out there forever and ever. Also, I use this information to update the roster. So if you want to get a copy of today's presentation, which the handout is very extensive and it's got a lot of really good information, I need to know you're here. I only know you're here is if you put your information into the chat window. So that's how we're going to be able to get that out to everybody this afternoon. So we'll put 30 seconds on the clock. You still have plenty of time to get your information in. Just, please put it in so that way we'll count you on the roster. We'll make sure you get an email out this afternoon with all the information. So please feel free to continue putting your information in. All right, if you know somebody who is unemployed, if they're new to be unemployed, if you have a friend who just got laid off or something, please let them know about Career DFW and careerusa.org, two totally free websites that are there to help you. One of the things on the Career DFW calendar is on the Career DFW website is a bunch of calendars, and the calendars, this is the everything calendar, and on there you can find all sorts of great information about other workshops that are going on, job fairs that are happening. All the color code is on there if you go look at things. So just let people know about Career DFW if you live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And if you live outside the Dallas-Fort Worth area, please let them know about careerusa.org, and the free workshops that we're putting on 4 days a week. All right, it's time to hear from the practice interview team. Good morning, Mark.
Hey, here we go. Hey, good morning, everybody. So let me tell you a little bit about the practice interview team. We're all about building your confidence that you can tell your story well in an interview situation. And there's a lot of situations to be prepared for. Of course, there's these difficult questions, but there's panel interviews, there are disagreeable interviewers. Some interviewers would sometimes like to put you under a little stress by being difficult. So we cover over a period of time all of those situations. Our tagline, our motto, I guess, is to practice early and practice often. So practice early means, as soon as you find out you're in the job search, you should find a job description that looks good to you. It doesn't even have to be something you're actively pursuing, but it's representative of what you'd like to do. Send that in, and we'll give you a practice interview. So you can get the process started, learning best practices and discovering if you have any hitches in your get up, so to speak, things that are going to affect your candidacy that you need to modify. So the interviews are done by volunteers. The volunteers have all been hiring managers as part of their professional responsibility. And they've also all been through job transition. So some of them, most of them actually, are currently in job transition. I'm now retired, and I have a few other retired, but I was laid off 3 times during the last 10 years of my career. So I claim some expertise in being laid off. It's designed that way because we're very sympathetic and empathetic to your situation. And we also all have skills associated with selecting people to come to work for our company. So you're going to get the advantage of that knowledge and those skills when you have a practice interview. A lot of candidates comment on how thorough the pit crew prepares for their interviews. So it's a very realistic experience, I have to say. Some people may even say after they land that all the other interviews were pretty easy compared to the pit crew interview. So we're not afraid to ask the tough questions and give you a chance to practice answering those tough questions. When you're ready to practice, send your information in. That's your resume and your job description to dallaspitcrew@gmail.com. Takes 2 to 3 days to line up everybody's schedule. We do the interviews during the week, business hours. If you've got a special situation, we can do them on the weekend or we can do them in the evening. Special situation might be childcare, or you have a part-time job, or you have a full-time job and you're not yet in transition. We can work around all of those scheduling challenges. Just give us a chance. Send your information in and give us a chance. The interview itself takes about 45 minutes. There's about 10 minutes of introduction, and there'll be a good 20 or 25 minutes of discussion after the interview is over. We use the Zoom technology, which means you're going to get a recording of this afterwards, so you can review how you did and how you think you might improve yourself without the feedback from the pit crew. And you can practice as many times as you'd like. Really, some people wonder about that, but it's only you know how long it's going to take before you're confident you can handle any interview situation. So come back and practice for new opportunities or for the second or third round of an opportunity you've already practiced for. We believe strongly that practice And this kind of immersion therapy where you're practicing in a realistic environment is the best way to become prepared. And it also teaches you how to prepare. So after 4 or 5 practice interviews, you may feel you've got it down, and that's great. And just come back and practice for, that very last round when it's just you and one other candidate. So we cover all that through with our experience. So that's a 2-way interview. When you're ready, send your information in. Pit Crew also offers a 1-way practice interview. This is where you interview with a video bot. And I make it very easy for you because when I was first introduced to this, I was struck by how awkward it is to just talk to your computer when nobody's on the other end. And so this is the way I designed the Pit Crew's 1-way video interview offering. I give you the questions in advance. There's only 4 questions. I'm sorry. There's 4 questions. And you get 3 minutes to answer each one of them. So the whole process is only going to take 12 minutes. And you'll get a video of that. And nobody else is going to see that video. I won't see it. And so you can just do your own self-assessment. And if you want to practice again, you can practice again. Once you know how to start the process, it's pretty straightforward to do it again until you feel comfortable with these 1-way video interviews. And it's going to take a little bit, I think, to become comfortable. There's my LinkedIn profile. I encourage you to link in with me. I'm building my network for those that are in job transition. So if you don't include a note that indicates we met in some networking meeting like this one, and that's all I need to know is that we met on the North Dallas Career Focus Group Friday morning meeting, then I'm not going to add you to my network. So include that note and you'll get the benefit of all the people in my network when you're looking for contacts inside target companies. I coach 2 things I want to finish up with. I coach on one topic. I'm very focused here. I coach on how to answer the question, why did you leave your last job? And some people call this your reason for leaving, which may include other jobs in your resume. It may not just be the last one. So if you have any doubt that you're able to answer this question with brevity and confidence, then let's have a conversation about how to do that. And we'll storyboard how to answer the question, but also any follow-up questions that could be generated by your situation and give you a very positive way to leave a positive impression about that time in your career. So the second thing is I just announced that one of my panelists landed. So they're in job transition just like you. They find jobs and I need to find new panelists to keep the roster a good size, which I like to keep about 30 people on the roster. So no one individual is, feels obligated to spend a lot of time with the Pit Crew. Volunteer when you're available. You'll get a lot out of it. It's a great way to help people. You get a lot of satisfaction when someone lands, and you'll benefit as well. Your interviewing will be improved. And I'd say I just came to the recognition a couple of weeks ago that you'll probably be a better manager after going through this process. So reach out to me if you're interested in being a volunteer for the Pit Crew. It's pretty straightforward and a great thing to do while you're in job search. Thanks, Jim.
Mark, thank you very, very much. All right, time to hear from Walt Glass, Interview Success Workshop.
Well, good morning, everyone. And what is the Interview Success Workshop and how does it compare to the Pit Crew? First of all, the Pit Crew is a mock interview panel. Excellent opportunity. Hardly recommend that you participate in that. As I was looking around after I retired, my wife passed away and said, well, now what? I did a failed interview back in 2000. So I did a good deep dive and I put together my thoughts and issues on what in the heck is interviewing all about. So I liken the Interview Success Workshop to what a football team, they go out, they practice certain plays. They will practice blocking, tackling, all that sort of thing. And then they get into a game and they're executing all of those things. And so I looked at the Interview Success Workshop in a very similar fashion and said, well, what is it that we're selling? What are they buying? How do we differentiate ourselves positively? How can we be memorable in an interview so that when the team gets together to discuss, we stand out? we are memorable. There's something about us that stands out. Sometimes it's only they say, well, what was so good about the interviews? I don't know. It's just a good interview. Maybe they can't even describe it, but we want to make that kind of connection. And so how do we do that? Well, there's three elements of what we're selling. That's I am, I do, I help. Who we are, our characteristics, what we do, the activities, our hard skills, and how we can help them. Most interviews that I see, a huge majority is on the I do. It actually comes out I did, but it's still under the I do time element. And a little bit about our personality and characteristics, and very little about selling, how we can help them. Every job has a purpose for us to achieve something. So the workshop focuses on combining who we are and what we do in order to achieve these kinds of results for them, and then give them some evidence that we can do that by telling them how we've done that before. So the workshop is fundamental. It covers the basic categories of questions, motivations behind them. Sometimes you got to make sure you answer the motivation, not just the question. It also gives us a chance to be very informal. Okay, it is the workshop part. Yes, you'll get an interview. We'll cover those 12 basic categories. You'll respond, you get a video of that, and we'll also discuss your responses. Sometimes if it's just one person, I do a question, answer, and discussion. And when I have two, you interview each other. I make notes on in either case of your responses. Then we go through each question and talk about your responses. So that's the workshop part of it. Yes, you'll get a video so you can look at yourself. Every time I look at myself, I think I can do better. I need to smile more. I need to not talk so much like I'm doing right now. But to register, to sign up, all you have to do is go to my Walt Glass About section on LinkedIn. Gives you my Yahoo address. I reserve that for the workshop. Just send me a note because you have to be registered, and I'll give you opportunities and dates. We'll get you scheduled. I'll just need a resume and a typical or real job description so that you can show that you've got focus and we look at responses in relationship to the relevancy to the job description. So it's a learning time. It's not a sweat time. It's not a squeeze your cheeks time. It's just some fun that we can have and get better. So I call it learning without squirming. Are you tired of redeployment? Are you looking for some enjoyment? Well, I don't want to be rude, but have a positive attitude. It's the shorter path to employment.
Walt, thank you very, very much. All right, it's time to hear this week's career tip of the week. You can find it on the Career DFW or careerusa.org website. Rosanna, good morning, and thank you for sharing it with us today.
Good morning, Jeff. Good morning, everyone. All right. Well, this week's career tip of the week is dated August the 14th, and it's get it in writing, why you need a written job offer. It may be an employee's market, but your best bet for making sure that existing job offers come to fruition is to look out for yourself. Ask for a written offer immediately. Here's what to know and what to do. And this article is written by Mari Alvarez. So to say I was overjoyed would be an understatement when I was told I was going to be the director of hygiene with an up-and-coming DSO. I completed a few phone interviews, and even attended an upper management Zoom meeting. I then received a verbal job offer. I couldn't believe I was going to be someone important, someone in charge. The company's hygiene program was going to be mine to design and implement. I was thrilled for myself, and my aching neck and back were thrilled for me too. This was my opportunity to move on to something big, as well as use my hygiene skills to help other clinicians and offices succeed. The only problem, I didn't get my job offer in writing. The company sent me through hoops to find a start date. My messages and texts sat in inboxes unanswered and even unread. It was a maze I never got out of. Why was this happening to me? Why would the recruiter, CFO, and current hygienist tell me that they were excited to have me on their team? I was ghosted and back to step one, but I moved on and pursued other jobs and projects. It was a painful learning experience, but I took time to calm my emotions. I reflected on the mistake I made by failing to ask for a written job offer, and I will never make that mistake again. Afterward, I began brainstorming and thought about all the content that should be included in a written job offer. So first, what a written offer should look like. First and foremost, a written offer diminishes miscommunication and misunderstandings of several aspects of a new job. Let's begin with the basics. The document should include a start date, job title, pay, location, responsibilities, if it's full-time or part-time, and hours. Other specific aspects might be included in an employee contract rather than a job offer, but having more clarification is in the employee's best interest. Before moving on and finalizing the employee contract, it never hurts to press deeper and inquire about benefits, vacation days, sick days, parental leave, a raise after a probationary period, and so forth. In the dental field, it's also a good idea to discuss details regarding scrub allowance, continuing education courses, and even bonus structure. Next, points to reduce uncertainty. The job offer can also be used as a future reference if terms were agreed upon and not met in the employee contract. If an $85,000 annual salary was discussed verbally, but the employee contract states $75,000, that is a clear miscommunication. Monetary disputes may not be the best way to begin an employer-employee relationship. And for most people, it's typically a difficult topic to discuss. A written job offer bridges that gap to hopefully avoid difficult situations. Additionally, a verbal job offer without a written one can lead to a future employee's easy acceptance of terms that the company provides. This leaves no room to negotiate salary or other important items. I have a colleague who was able to arrange a higher salary with her employer to compensate for a lack of benefits offered. She received her salary expectations in writing to eliminate uncertainty while moving on to the next step of the hiring process. Keep in mind that written job offers are not set in stone and aren't considered legally binding documents like an employment contract is. Even so, a written offer shows the integrity of employers and when they state that they're willing to follow through with agreements. Think of the document as a genuine transaction. It's not illegal not to have a written job offer, nor is it illegal to rescind one with either party. For example, if you fail a drug test and background check, the company can easily take back their offer. The company can also have a number of reasons to revoke their decision, such as an employee having a criminal history, company restructuring, or even changing their mind about candidates altogether. Number one, in nearly every state, the employment relationship may be terminated at any time by the employer or employee for any reason or no reason, with or without cause or notice, so long as the reason is not statutorily prohibited or otherwise unlawful. In other words, a job offer can be legally rescinded even after it has been accepted, as long as the company is not discriminating against sex, ethnicity, race, creed, pregnancy status, and so on. However, repealing an offer is not always black and white. If your livelihood has been affected by the perception of beginning a new job, there may be grounds for legal action. For example, let me say you moved from one state to another and were relying on the new job to pay for your moving costs and new living situation. You expect to begin a new job in a week, and at the last minute, the company changes their mind about the job offer. You're now living in a new state with no job and no immediate income. This might be a liability for the company. In this case, you'd want to seek legal advice. Next, you might have to ask for the offer. Just because you don't initially receive a written job offer or must ask for one, doesn't mean that the company is looking to undermine you. It might mean that they're used to a more casual hiring approach, especially if it's a small business. In some cases, receiving an offer in writing can be a matter of a formal versus informal business protocol. Next, look out for yourself. Would a written job offer have helped me in my previous situation? In hindsight, it's hard to tell, but it would have provided me with peace of mind. It would have also sent a message to the wholeheartedness of on behalf of the company. The document may have also made the company accountable for their actions and details discussed. Instead, I was left confused and with little esteem for those who I was trying to keep in contact with. Did the company have the right to cut ties with me? It looks like it, but it still doesn't sit well with me. A word of advice: if you have an exciting job offer, don't lose yourself in the hype, and remember to always look out for yourself. Asking for a job offer in writing can seem like a nuisance, but it's a great way to ensure your understanding of a new undertaking. Can you email me the job offer with all the details we discussed? Is a great starting point. Just want to let you guys also know that one of our speakers, Andy Cook, she frequents Career DFW, North Dallas Focus Group every now and then as a speaker. Well, several weeks ago on her website, and her name is Andy, A-N-D-I, Cook, C-O-O-K. She posted on her LinkedIn profile posts about employers here in the DFW area that had been rescinding offers. Most likely they were probably due to all the conversations and news media topics surrounding recession, but at least you have an idea that that is what has been happening, according to some of the posts and articles that she has on her LinkedIn profile. So make sure, everybody, please get your offers in writing and be prepared for the unexpected, just in case there is a rescinding of the offer. Wishing each and every one of you a wonderful weekend. Have a great one.
Rosanna, thank you very, very much. Thank you for your information.
You're
All
welcome.
right, in just a couple minutes, we'll hear from Walt Glass. We'll be talking about vetting values and culture. But I want to talk about our upcoming session next Friday. Kurt Vondermatter will be with us to talk of you from a retained search consultant. I've asked Kurt to, come join us and tell us, what does he see? What is he seeing out there in the market? He's trying to place candidates for a lot of private companies and everything. So just to get his thoughts and ideas and just be able to open up a little bit of questions and comments from you all. But that should be interesting because he's got his pulse. I mean, this is his business, trying to land people. And then the first Friday in September 2nd, hard to believe September is almost here. We will talk about open forum. All right, it's time for our main event. Most of you, everybody here should know who Walt Glass is. Walt's been helping people in career search for many, many years now. Primarily helping with interviewing, but he also talks about information interviewing. He talks about networking. Walt's been a real benefit to a lot of people who are out here. His presentations on vetting values and culture, it's jam-packed full of information. So I will tell you this, we have a handout that will have all the slides. As long as I have your contact information in the chat window, I'll be sure to get this to you this afternoon. But if you don't tell me you're here, I'm not going to know and not be able to get you here. So Walt, thank you for being with us, and it's all yours.
Well, I'm getting used to turning the mute off. I'm doing pretty well the last few months, yeah? Well, hello again, everyone. So, of course, you know about my workshop. I already described some of that. But inside of that, there's a few things that I wanted to kind of dive a little bit deeper on. So today is one of those days. Let's go back to the interview itself. What are we selling? If you were here at the beginning and heard me, we talk about the I am, I do, I help. All right. And that's very important to understand how we can do that, which is what the workshop is all about, so that we can then go to those panel interviews with Pit Crew, be a lot more successful. more polished, and more confident. So today, we're going to really focus on the I am, the soft skills, and the I do side of things a little bit differently, and particularly with how things are done. So we know what we do, but there's some importance about how things are done as well. So we're going to focus on that. Now, I just talked about the I am, I do, I help, but note that I am can actually override the I do and I help in a job interview. Why is that? Well, if it doesn't fit the culture, you're not happy there, they're not happy with you there, it really doesn't matter so much that you can do the job and that you can help them do things. It's just that it's not a good place to work. There was a person who took a job, his name was Brian, and after working there for just 2 or 3 months, he said, this is a terrible place to work. I just don't like working here. And he left that job and found a company where he says, it's great. It's like a family. It's really fun to work, all that sort of thing. And so that's what we want to talk about today, because wouldn't we like to just go ahead and find that type of company? So we're going to see if we can figure out how to select potential companies where we can determine if their working values and their culture matches ours. So I did some work in diving and research on that, and I'm going to share that with you today. Let's talk about values and culture in just a moment. Values are the beliefs, philosophies, and principles that drive the business, and culture is that set of shared attitudes, values, goals, and practices that's the character of the institution. So the values are embedded in the culture. It's one of the major parts. So why are company values really important? 50% of CEOs, CFOs, it influences these things: productivity, creativity, profitability, value, growth, all that. Isn't it interesting that only 50% say that? I wouldn't think a lot more than 50% ought to be saying that. And 88% of employees believe that the culture is very, very critical to the business success. So more employees believe it than CEOs and CFOs. Isn't that an interesting statistic? So kind of reviewing again, what about them? They're the fundamental beliefs. They dictate behavior and help us understand ethical, what's the right thing to do. And also determine if we're on the right path, and it can help fulfill our goals while we are fulfilling the company's goals. That's one of my definitions of leadership. Definition of hiring is hiring people that we can have them achieve their goals while achieving our goals. So our goals are the most important, the company goals. So we want to make sure that our goals fit in with that as well. Now there's 3 types of values. There's the posted values. So you go look up on the web page, and this is what they say on the web page. Then there's the aspirational values, and that's the way they would like to have. So some companies that want to go through a cultural change, a very, very difficult task. But they'd say, this is, here's what we want to be. And then there's what we call the actual values. And this is the way things really, really happen. Things really happen here. So I can remember very well that when I joined a little company called EDS, I had about 3,000 people in it years ago. Worked there 25 years, but there was a couple of things that there was not in the job description. It was not listed. It wasn't talked about, and you learned it after you got there. Now, this so happened to be right on track with mine. I kind of lucked out. I knew a little bit about it because my uncle worked there, and I was living in Florida, and he was here in Texas, and introduced me to the company. But how they actually work is very, very critical to our success and their success. So we're going to look at actual values, the way things really work. So they shape the culture. We're working the same goals. It helps in attracting and retaining top talent, makes the right decisions. It impacts the strategy. So there's several things here, a lot of positive things about how values are important and can affect a particular company. We want to take advantage of knowing what those are. So let's go now to the culture, and I'll put values in the center since that appears to be really the fundamental basis. And then there's a lot of ways you can describe corporate culture. So it's the spirit of the company, it's the unwritten code, I remember there was a couple of unwritten codes when I joined EDS that I found out. And one was deadlines were sacred. All right. Another one was you have to have a sense of urgency. Another one was if you find a problem, you own it. You are to resolve it or get it into the hands of someone who can resolve it. All right. So those things kind of permeated that organization, so that if you saw a problem, you just didn't walk away from it shaking your head and say, oh, no, that's yours. Figure out how to resolve it or get that. So those kind of things were pretty important as I learned them going through that. You can kind of summarize it up, and it's just the way we do things around here. You know, how do we do things? That's a very broad statement, but basically that's an overall statement for what the corporate culture is like. What's wrong with these statistics? I need some help here. 38% of U.S. employees want a job that aligns with their interests and passions. So anybody want to comment on what's wrong with that number? Just jump in. The fear of being wrong keeps us silent.
It's really low.
Right, it is.
Yeah,
I would
extremely low. Extremely low. I'm surprised it was not 70%.
Right. Why aren't we wanting jobs? And that's amazing. All right. And so you would think that that'd be a much, much higher number that aligns, but that kind of tells me that people take jobs and then find out the culture. That happens a lot. And so I kind of like to reverse that. That's why the whole purpose is, by the way, this presentation, you know, if it goes really well and it's of great value to you, it's going to be the kickoff. If it needs a lot of work, it's going to be a pilot. 47% of active job seekers says the culture is their driving reason in looking for work. Isn't that interesting? Well, if they're currently working in a culture that they don't like and they want to change, then the reason they shouldn't have chosen that in the first place. All right. Now, there's kind of there's always exceptions. Sometimes you have to choose something, and it may not be ideal for you, but it's like a position B that will help you get to position A down the road. So, but that's an awfully high number of people looking for another job because, and it's the culture. That's the main thing, right? That's very, very I just can't believe that number is that low. It should be, that high. It should be a lot lower than that. Well, what's wrong with this one? They would pass on the perfect job if culture wasn't a good fit. So that indicates that 65% would go ahead and take the job. And so now it comes down to the definition of perfect. What does perfect really mean? And we'll talk a little bit about that. So I'll say that one's too low. All right, how about this one? 50% of job seekers turn down a job offer because of the company's culture.
Too low. Same thing, too low. You get in there
Right.
and you just can't stand your job. Can't stand the company. You might like the job, but can't stand the company culture.
From that perspective, I agree with you. There's another perspective that says 85% of people don't turn down the job offer, right? We would like this to be a very, very low number so that when we get to the job offer, we already know that it's a culture fit. We don't want to get the job and then find out, or at the offer time, we figure out that it's not the right culture. We'd like to do it way before then. Look at all the time and effort and energy you've spent going through the interview process and all that sort of thing, just to get down to the offer and then say, no, I don't think this is the right place. So I like to see that really, really very low. So what is the perfect job? So here's how I define it. It's compatibility between four elements. First, the job itself. Second, the organization, which includes the values and culture, but it also might include industry and other things. The coworkers, the team player, the team members that you're going to work with, and your direct supervisor. I contend that many people, I like to see a statistic on this, is why did you leave your last job? And it says, because of my dumb manager. All right. It was because of a lousy manager. That people often leave the managers, not companies. Now, sometimes it's the other, but lots of times a manager can drive you nuts. And if you can't get along, so we like to find a company that where the job is right, the organization's right, like the team, and we like our manager. All right, that would not be great. So we should be vetting and targeting opportunities that are best fit in all these areas. And you have to kind of prioritize those as to what's important to you, because it's kind of rare to hit 100% on all 4 elements. But we need to understand what's our best thing, because I've always said this, sometimes we have a tough time making a decision. But one of the things that was the critical success factor when I was working with EDS is that we made decisions work. Didn't say we made good decisions. I said we made decisions work. All right. And so we might spend a little bit more money, or we might make a mistake or something, but we continue on. And so we made it work and we met the deadline. So that was very, very critical. You know, particularly when you're handling the information technology of other companies, banks, insurance companies, health insurance, all that sort of thing. We've got their data. We better be presenting some sort of quality impression to them that we'll take care of that. All right. So what happens if there isn't a fit? Well, these kind of elements show up. Stress starts. When you go to work on Monday, you say, I can't wait till it's Friday. Don't have the same level of commitments. The job is not that. We might turn to low self-esteem because we're not getting along with others, and that affects us personally. Low energy, not belonging. That's a huge one. All right. All of us want to belong, right? Our performance can go down, frustration, so the whole bunch of things, but sooner or later, we will leave the company one way or the other. So let's get started on this vetting idea. First of all, we have to know ourselves. All right. What are our values? Here's 12 different items, and there's more than this, but what is it about you? How would you describe yourself? How do others describe you to know this is where I thrive? This is what motivates me. This is the experience and ability that I have in this particular role. Here's my important values. Integrity could be a very big value in something. So if you see people cutting corners and doing things, and I was talking with a guy about Medicare insurance, and I told him I can't say yes to all these questions, and if I say no to any one of them, they won't insure me. He said, "Oh, I've been doing this for a lot of years." No, he was telling me to lie. He was telling me to just go ahead and put it in there. It didn't make a difference. And I said, "Well, can't do that. It's just not for me." So understanding ourselves. Well, so I went out there. I found there's only about 2,000 of these, so I found 148. So all right, and there's 2 ways you can look at this. Basically, one is I'll go through it and pick out and say, okay, I think this is me, and I pick out the ones that are me, right? Then that's my impression of myself. Guess what? It's not the same impression at work. It's not the same impression that other people have. So getting information from others, taking those assessments can help you understand yourself, to understand, all right, this is really important to me. Which one's important? So, yeah, you can go through and start picking out things here, but just stop and think about what is your value system? How do you really like to operate? What is the way that you say, man, if I could do it this way and I could operate under this type of environment? So, yep. So I went through and I picked out a whole bunch of them. That didn't mean a whole lot. I'm not going to show them to you, but you can go out there and find hundreds of these things, but understanding what you prioritize and what's more important to you. And I definitely suggest that you prioritize them. You know, what is the most important thing? I mean, what's the showstopper? If this company doesn't have this, I'm not there. All right. Is there something that's like that? Sometimes we can say, you know, I love this one. I was looking at a job description of a person that I interviewed Tuesday, and the bullet said a high degree of integrity. And I was thinking, oh, well, I just have a medium degree of integrity. Maybe it's a low. Integrity is integrity, right? And so where does integrity stand with that? That was kind of interesting. All right. So one of the things I discovered and looked out there's a website, and I'm going to give you some URLs later. It's in the handout. All these are in the handout to where I got some of this information. And some of it's my own that's inserted where I thought that they needed a little bit of correcting. You know, I know how to do it right, so I put my stuff in there. But anyway, I put some of my thoughts in. So there's basically, they said 8 kind of culture types: the purpose, caring, order, safety, authority, results, enjoyment, and learning, how they're characterized. So I said, okay, well, that sounds pretty interesting. Maybe it would help me to kind of look at companies and say, let me see, maybe what kind of type do they fit in and into these 8 types, and what type is the one that I like. You know, do I like the authority company? Well, great, join the military. That's pretty have authority level. But how is it that you like? Healthcare generally is in the caring arena. So even with these 8 culture types, then I was looking at something else, and they said, well, there's like 2 dimensions of the culture types: the way people interact, independent and interdependent, and how they respond to change, stability to instability. Well, there is an 11th commandment that God sent us, and he said, thou shalt always divide people into 4 quadrants. So therefore, they came up with 4 quadrants for how this comes out. And so they took those 8 types and kind of put them in these 4 quadrants. And so the purpose-driven company is pretty high on flexibility and a lot on interdependence. So here's our heavy teamwork over here. Over here is more of the interdependence, all right? Kind of interesting to look at that. But what was really came out of this to help me understand values is, let me look at these items right through here, okay? Wait a second. Jeff, I may need your annotation skills, but I'm looking at purpose. Now I'll go across purpose and say, okay, employees are united by, they're generally this, they emphasize this from leadership. What are they good for? So an organization that is making an impact on the world. Can anyone name me one of the companies that's trying to make the most significant impact on the world?
The church.
Church? How about Amazon? Amazon wants to be the most customer-centric company in the world. But there are organizations that are really trying to make it, not-for-profits, other types. So here's an example of one. The Whole Foods is an example of that. So you can go look up Whole Foods and see a little bit about what they say on their website. So here's a whole bunch. I'm not going to go through all of them. This is one of those documents that you can look at. There's a lot more in here that exists that I'm going to talk about, because we don't need to go through all of this stuff. You can go look it up later as you look at the handout. So let's start researching the web. And guess what? I saw this one website that said, well, here's 28 companies, and they listed the values and the examples of them. Now, there's 2 kinds of things. The values are part of it, but descriptions of the culture is another part of it. And you'll see how this is defined. So I looked at 2 of them, particularly here. I picked out 2 of them. If you go to this website, you can look at all these. So if any of these happen to be your target company or target you're interested in, there's a website you can go find out some more details that kind of summarizes what they do. So what is Google? And I want you to look at Google and then to the next one and compare them. So Google has 10 great things. Just kind of look at those. Focus on the user. Do the right thing. Do it really well. We want to do it fast. Use democracy. I guess everybody gets a vote. Okay? You don't have to sit at your desk. Go find the answer. You don't have to be bad or do something wrong but still make money. Information crosses borders. You can be serious without a suit. All right? The dress standard. Great just isn't good enough. So that gives us the impression of Google, and they're describing their culture. There's not really a value listed here. It's a description. And let's go to Zappos. Now, Zappos is a clothing organization. So they deliver wow through service, change, fun, weirdness, creative, growth and learning. Look at those compared to the one that we just looked at for Google. Very different culture. Now, you know that companies have a lot of different cultures. And I'm just pulling these two out as an example. But which one of those attracts you to either one of them? Say, oh, I'd rather have that kind of set rather than the other set. So can help us choose what we want if we already know what we want. All right, we got to go back to that part. So I went out there and I found this website and I thought it was kind of interesting. And so they said, these are the top 10 common values. Now I can tell you that there's about 30 websites that says these are the top 10 values, and they're all over the place. You can search and look for all of them. But so let me do something here. And I'm just selected these. There's nothing more important about one than the other. These aren't the absolute ones. You got to have these. And there's, emotional intelligence not even listed here. Collaboration. We got teamwork, but it didn't say collaborate. So lots of things are not there. So I'm going to go through one of these. I'm going to go through one on time management, maybe communication, and then we'll just skip through the others. So time management has some sub values. So there's, one value is not just the deal maker. Sometimes it's a set of values that are complementary and support each other that can make the difference. So I thought that was a pretty interesting way to look at things. And so let's look at time management, the definition of it. I always start with the definition. So I went out and said, okay, how do I do that? And I kind of put my own one in there. Then it says, well, you got to manage stress. You got to have your organizational skills, prioritizing skills, planning and goal setting, and communication. And so you might want to look at these and you go back to say, okay, I'm interested in this one, or whatever it might be. You come back and look here and say, well, here's some adjunct or supplementary, complementary type skills that go along with it. Yeah, that sounds like me and how I can do that. So I'm not going to go through all these, but you can see that they're all in there. Another way I started to look at things and said, well, what about if in the career path, what's a typical type of soft skills that would be important for a particular path? So, and then you might be in two of these. You might be in healthcare and management. Okay, so it's not just one single one. So I said, okay, let me look at those and see what's going on with that. So they came up with I don't know, about 8 or so descriptions of soft skills with these particular paths. So customer service had the communication, listening, self-control, attitude, service, etc. Notice that the communication kind of shows up in some of these written and oral communication, some of the common things, public speaking things. So if you're in customer service, healthcare, any of these types, you can kind of look at this and say, all right, these looks like the type of skills that they would be looking for. That helps me generate a list and say, well, if I'm in sales or if I'm in accounting or I'm in education, these are probably some of the things that would be advantageous. And do I have those and do I match those for that type of career path? Now we get down to, well, the vetting part. Now that we know where we can go look up values and look at them in different perspectives and get different ideas, we've done our self-assessment, we've got our list of how to describe the culture as well as what our values are. We're ready to go. So now we want to say, all right, how do I determine that? So how do I really vet that? Now there's 2 different scenarios here, the job interview and the informational interview. Well, of course, in the job interview, we should prepare some questions about culture. But we only have so many questions we can ask. And it's just one area of questions. It's just the culture area that we can ask. And so we have to be pretty smart, pretty wise on choosing questions for these areas. And probably might only come down to 1 question per area. In the informational interview, well, we're on this side of the table and we can ask a lot more questions about culture and values than we can in an interview. We must prioritize then our questions to determine that. So we see this company, we like this company, we want to find out more about the culture. We'd like to do an informational interview. And I'd say, okay, what are my top 3 or 4 values? And let me see what exists there and what question could I ask for them to describe that value there. So that's the whole thing about putting this thing together. Well, here's another list. Popular company values, teamwork, customer respect, integrity. So I took these, said, okay, these are good. Now this isn't it almost doesn't matter what these are in this presentation. The idea is how do we go about using them and how do we match up? All right. So don't take anything to mean, teamwork and collaboration is the most got to have company value above all companies. No, it's not. It just depends on the company and the type it is, and what's important there might be different than what's important in another company. So I've built a table, and this is what I would like you to do with your values. All right. So the table contains, well, what's the value? What's the definition of it? What's the value of the value? What good is that value? What does it do for us if we have that value? How is it demonstrated? What does it look like? How can we tell if that value is a working value? All right. Not the posted value, not the wannabe, but the working value. And then, all right, and what question might I ask to see if that value is a working value? All right, with me? So, all right, here's the elements across the top. I got the 5. So I picked, let's go through the first one. Let me go back to, let's see. Yeah, would someone pick a second value? I'm gonna do the first one. I'm gonna walk through it, but would somebody like to pick one of these and let me know another one that we could briefly look at?
Passion.
Passion. All right. Passion be number 5. Thank you very much. Was that you, David?
Yes.
All right. Thanks, David. How's things in Atlanta?
I don't know. I'm in Dallas.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that.
It's all good.
Well, have you been running lately? How about that one?
I ran a marathon on Sunday.
On Sunday? Well, good luck to you.
No, I ran it this past Sunday.
Oh, past Sunday. Good.
Yep.
3 hours and 41 minutes?
Oh, I wish. The wheels fell off. I've got to work on some stuff.
Okay.
I
So let's
finished
look
it,
at
though.
the, thank you, David.
Yep.
So let's take the value. Okay, the value was number 1 was teamwork and collaboration. So what's the definition of it? 2 or more people or organizations working together to complete a task. And I threw in this shared goal. One of the definitions of teamwork, it has several elements in it. One of them is a mutually agreed upon shared goal. If you don't have that, you might have a team, but you don't have teamwork. So anyway, that's the definition. So what's the value of that? Well, it drives growth and innovation. We can handle change. We do a lot more together than we do by individuals. A lot less tension, a lot less stress. And particularly when we've got a stressful work environment, higher satisfaction. So here's a bunch of good things about what teamwork and stuff can do. And these are some of the things we can talk about in an interview about in our stories. We can say there was a lot of stress going on. And when we put this together, everybody kind of relaxed and got together and put forward, and you can show how the value of the value plays an important part. Remember, we're selling am and do I help? Well, the value of the value is how does that value help us, right? So what's it demonstrated by? So here's a bunch of bullets. They say you'll have team rewards, you'll see flexibility, clear roles. Everybody knows how to find information, where to go, good relationships, good high output. We work for others to be successful. There's those mutually agreed upon goals and the dialogue and brainstorming activities. I want to do a little timeout because brainstorming is a pet peeve of mine, so I'll get back to this in a second. The problem with brainstorming, which is its purpose is to be creative in a solution, is that we stop at the creativity point. So far, everybody's just in IT world, we say dump core. We just put out our ideas. And there's a little bit of additional thinking or creativity that might come when somebody else pegs an idea. But if we go through the wall of silence, because when I did the brainstorming, I said, okay, everybody looks like we're running out of gas here. I said, all right, let's all think of 2 more things that nobody's thought of before, and sit there and think. When in the business world are you allowed to sit there and think? I mean, you can't do that. You got to be busy. You got to be doing something. So when you do brainstorming, or you might want to ask them about their brainstorming, because if you're checking creativity is one, this could be a way you could also check that particular value. to say, all right, how do you handle brainstorming? All right, so there's how it's demonstrated. So now here's some questions, and this is not the end all to all. There's questions, there's just several I put together and said, all right, how would you describe this? How do other departments communicate with these kind of things, so that you can determine what does it look like to see teamwork and collaboration. All right, so that's that table. So you said number 5, so we'll go down to number 5, passion. Intense driving or overmastering feeling of conviction. That's pretty clever. You know, I was thinking about the definition of things. Every time I think of a definition, I have a little hard time getting around it. I mean, kind of know what it is, but to actually verbalize it. And so if I were to say, you know, verbalize ethics, define that, what it would be. It takes a minute or two or so for us to kind of put it down. And I thought, well, if you don't understand the definition, how can you understand the rest of it? So if you can't verbalize the definition, then it's going to be hard to do the rest. So putting that definition down is pretty important. Employees are motivated, increased productivity, drives success, gets other people, it's very contagious, provides momentum. All right. How is it demonstrated? You'll see active engagement. It's when you love what you do, you love why you do it, and you love the people you work with. All right. That comes out, that shows that you have passion, because all these things are in place. Satisfaction levels, several things there. So here's 2 or 3 questions that you could ask. Elizabeth Lyons likes this question. I got this question from her. You know, it's about the difficult day. Describe a difficult day, or tell me about a day that didn't go right, or something went wrong, and how you handle that. Doesn't that? Some people do not think that we cannot ask star story or open-ended questions to our interviewers to describe and tell us things, but they are excellent things to ask. Now, time is a constraint. You got to be careful how much time you use on these. So I would say, you know, pick out your whichever ones you want, and then pick out a question, just one, so that you can, I would rather you cover 3 or 4 values than one value with 3 or 4 questions, right? So at least just one to give you some idea. And you might ask different questions to different people, or the same questions to different people. All right, so there's all of those. Leadership, a lot of stuff on leadership here. And then I added 4 other tables to it because there's transformational, there's transactional, there's autocratic, and there's democratic. All right. But the questions are almost all the same for all of those. So here's a lot of information. I've done a lot of homework, a lot of things. I've put my thoughts in, and I've gathered them from different places and things that I thought were appropriate. All right. So those are those. So how did I do this? So how should I suggest you do it? It's not that hard. So you've got your value. Go look at the definition of it. Make sure and just look, you know, those are easy to find. But search like the value or the importance of teamwork, the importance of ethics, the importance of whatever. All right. Search on how to demonstrate that name of the value. And you'll come up with multiple web pages that give you descriptions and answers and things like that you can choose from to say, all right, what are the 5 or 6 bullets that I might put down in my table to talk about what that is. Then, knowing how it's demonstrated, I now can look and ask questions that will show me what's demonstrated, right? So that's the process that you go through. My whole objective here for you to start vetting and doing that is to assess yourself, figure out what they are. Then you start and you just build you a row in the table that says, oh, here's this one. That helps you understand it. It helps you articulate it. And it helps you find out about it. Since culture overrides, you know, the I am and the how on the I do overrides a lot. That's why I'm putting this presentation together. It's such an important element. So out of 120 things you got to do, this is one of them. There's a ton of things out there to be done, but this one is so critical. If you can find your company values and culture in your vetting process before you even go out to try to work there, you're going to be using your time very wisely. So let's see if you can help me out with one. We'll just kind of go through it. So I picked work-life balance. And it's a big one today. It's a big topic. If you talk to the Zoomers, the Gen Zs, this is getting to be really important. You know, those that the college graduates and the people that are very young that went through the COVID years, they have a different set of values coming out on the other side. Do you remember when loyalty was a big value with employees? And today, you don't have any loyalty for us. You think I'm going to be loyal to you? I said, well, yes, in a sense, but this idea of everything for the company doesn't sell that much anymore. And plus, my values. So I'm a pre-baby boomer. I can't even tell you what I am. It's so long ago. But my set of values that I have are very, very different today than those that are coming into the marketplace. So help me with this. So I'll start with a definition. It's a definition of one's time and focus between working and non-working activities. No, okay, I made that one up mostly myself. So my question to you is, or help me add this. So I said the value said, well, you know, it's a lot less stressful. We have more productive. We have better physical health. Tell me some other things that the value of work-life balance brings to either us and or the company. Anybody got a couple ideas?
I think it makes you more creative.
Creating, okay. Isn't it interesting that we are becoming more productive with more balance? So in our work, when we are trying to work less, I remember I was working 90 hours a week for 8 years. Man, was that a bear, all right? Nights, weekends, 7 to 10 every day, there's lots of hours. But my performance appraisal manager says, well, you do it all. I don't know how you do it, but you do it all. And I said, well, it's easy. You work 90 hours a week. That's how you do it. So we will prioritize. We will figure out what's the most important thing to get done, and we'll pay attention to it. So it will force us to be more productive. So it's very interesting value. So how is that demonstrating? Well, how about your work hours? How about telecommuting, remote work? Do they give you gym memberships? What do the leaders do? How do they lead by an example on their work-life balance? All right. The right priorities. I remember, I think I use it next. All right. Anything else you want to add to that? How that would be demonstrated?
I know that's very important. I know my son had a job, and what he didn't realize was nobody ever takes time off. And he now knows that when he goes to interview the next company, one of the questions he will ask is, so tell me about the last vacation you took. Where'd you go? How long were you gone? Because if you're not gone or you don't take those vacations, it really said something about the company.
Thank you, Jeff. That's where I got that bullet from your story. So I included, I said, when did you take the last vacation? What's the typical work week look like? What are the outside interests that you have? Because if people have outside hobbies and interests and things like that, that'll give you an indication of what they're doing outside of the working hours. What do they do? Is there flexibility in the hours? All right, those types of things you can ask. Well, there's just an activity on the work-life balance. So here's what I want you to do. I'd like you to determine your top 3 values and your top 3 culture characteristics for a targeted job and a company. All right, so I would say, all right, if I had this kind of job and worked in this kind of company, had these value items and these culture items, that's going to be my target. All right. Then research those, determine the value. What does it look like? What's the value of it? And develop questions about it. So you actually would fill out a row in the table, right? Then prepare prioritize questions to include these value culture questions for which ones would you ask in the job interview and which ones you ask in the informational interviews. Now, you may have a similar list for both, but remember, we're not going to be able to ask as many in the job interview as we would in the informational. Thus, how important it is to prioritize what are those most important things to you in working in a company, right? Stay away from politics questions, because I don't like politics in a question, in a company. I was told that EDS, we don't have politics. And I just said, well, I'll kind of believe that when I see it. And yes, politics was greatly minimized. Well, I can tell you this, if you are a successful salesman in EDS, you could get away with a lot of stuff. Right? And so, but it was, that was one of the things. So those are the action items that I would like you to take. This is just for in the handout. Here's resource links to where I found a lot of this information that you can have. It's in there. So I'll take some questions and whatever that you might have. Just want to remind you about practicing. You should always practice, and in your preparing your list of questions, you ought to have a culture question or two that you're going to ask in both the interview and in the job. And I'm not going to put that up again. That's service. So any questions? What do you think? Somebody tell me.
Hey, Walt, this is Lee.
Feedback.
I thought it was very, very good. In the past, I've always looked at Glassdoor reviews because it gives company overall ratings. It gives a percentage of what this employees rate the CEO, and then if a percentage of recommending, if you would recommend that company to a friend. And then there's a lot of verbatims. And so I always take it with a grain of salt, but I've always used it kind of directionally. So any comments on if that's a good, another way to vet?
Absolutely. Here's the deal. When you fill out a survey, tell me how many are positive and how many are negative.
That's why I take it with a grain of salt, because it's going to be a lot of negative.
So my word to you is validate whatever source you get. Wherever it comes from, it's biased. It's going to be different. Some people have, and sometimes it's a department that's bad, not the whole company, So whatever information you get, do not take it as law, just take it as, I should check on this and make sure. Because I can find one person said it's the greatest company in the world, and another person said, I can't stand working there. So
yeah, and it usually changes by department or by city. So I also try to talk to somebody at the company as well, just to see, validate.
If I may chime in, this is Lisa.
Leon,
Leon, I like that question, and I often looked at Glassdoor as well. And as I'm listening to the both of you, I'm also factoring in each person, each individual, not just the feedback you get from whether it's Glassdoor, speaking to a current employer, but you also said something a little bit ago, Walt, about going to a job and the management or the immediate supervisor is like a horrible person to work with, and that would cause you to leave. So the thing is too, you have to factor in your own personality or your own individuality, because I may be a person who can handle more stress than Leon, for example, so kind of in that aspect, how do you do that? Because you got to factor in how much you can handle or what you're willing to do, kind of like your slide, Walt, with your own values. So you're dealing with a lot of different things. So what do you do in that regard?
Well, you do. I mean, that's why you look at your own. And so let's say that a stressful environment or, fast-paced environment. Let's take fast-paced because generally fast-paced produces stress, right? And so if it's a fast-paced environment, so you put down and say, well, how fast is fast-paced? What is tolerable for me? So that may not be at the top of your list, but it's on your list. And you say, okay, what's it like? And so you would ask that question of your manager that talks about things that reduce stress. And so you look at all the values that you could come up with and say, well, what kind of things reduce stress? So I would ask about those and see if the work-life balance is one of them, all right? If teamwork is a lot. So you look at the components of things that bring stress and say, tell me about those. And if the activities bring a lot of stress, then you say, all right, I can handle that much or I can't handle it. Where do you draw the line? Because you can't get them all 100%. So you might be able to tolerate that a lot more. Leon's a cool, calm, collected guy. I think he can handle more stress, perhaps, than I can. And my handling of stress is the wrong solution. I work longer, and that's not the right solution for me. Right? Good idea, though, Lisa. Good.
Well, thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you.
your contribution. Anyone else?
Lily had a good comment she put in the chat window. She said, in larger companies, it's been observed that there are pockets where core values are totally forgotten. It takes only one manager to spoil it, and they get away with it because no one wants to bring it to the notice of the company.
Well, if no one wants to bring it to the notice of the company, that is a cultural statement. That's telling you something right there, right? That nobody's willing to do that. That means there's fear in the organization, there's fear of retribution, that whatever it might be. This is one of the few times we get to choose our manager, right? Then after that, it's kind of the luck of the draw because things change, you get new people or whatever, or you transfer to another department, whatever it might be. Managers change. We always have the option to choose our manager. We can always leave and find another one, all right? And some people do that, but at the same time, why don't we find, man? So I would think how the manager manages, their leadership style, that sort of thing would be near the top of my list of compatibility for a particular opportunity.
If you've got a question, you're welcome to unmute your mic. Ask away.
I'm not sure that a company in an interview, if you were going around the questions of culture, would say, oh, it's pretty bad here. I mean, I guess you were giving more Q questions like how much PTO or work-life balance questions that you had earlier, but generally an interview is they're trying to show their best side as well, but maybe you really don't know about the culture until you're in.
That's true.
Yeah.
And plus, PTO shouldn't be brought up until the offer. All right. It's not,
Right.
You don't want to really ask questions, but you just say, what are the working hours here? Ask those general questions, something to find that. But that's going to be inside the benefits. And I always recommend that we don't get into those areas until we get to review the benefits and the offer in that time to do that. So, but you're right. Now there was an exception. Was it last Friday that somebody said, well, I went to an interview and all the team interviewers told them how bad it was?
Yeah, that was either last week or the week before. Yeah, there was.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of rare that happens. They were telling me, don't come to work here. It's really bad. So
Well, and it wasn't a matter of don't come to work here. It was a matter of you're not going to get along with the vice president who you'd be reporting to, that he destroys everybody. He doesn't listen, whatever. So everybody warned the person about that one manager, which was very unusual.
During the interview session earlier this week, there was a reference to direct and indirect questions. One of the indirect questions that has been helpful to me for gaining insight into culture is, after I've researched them on LinkedIn, I see that you've been here for a while. Tell me what keeps you here. What is it about the company that makes you, and so you'll be surprised how people respond to that.
What do you like about the company? What do you like about your job? What do you like about this team? What do you like about your manager? Describe your manager. A little bit, not quite so bluntly, but how would you describe your manager? Yeah. So yes, I just like the general question. What do you like about this company? And what areas do you think need improvement?
I like it.
Particularly if there's an area of improvement that I can help you improve. So I'm a little bit more specific on the areas of improvement. So if I'm in product development and I use this in other presentations where a person listened to the quarterly report and the CEO said, we need to develop products with a higher margin. And so the question was, when I listened to that, I heard the CEO say that, what are we doing to do that? Why do I ask that question? Because I'm in product development and I help you do that very thing. So finding questions that are tied to what you like and everything that fits you, and also how you can help them, is pretty important.
Lily, I see you have your hand up. Do you have a question?
On you, Lily.
I'm just a mess this morning. It looks like I unplugged my desktop accidentally, so I lost about 5 minutes, I guess. So Jeff, were you commenting on my comment? I just want to be sure I get feedback on what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, I mentioned that, you know, that it takes one bad manager, and as Walt followed up to say that if the people in the company are not willing to stand up for their values, that tells you about the company in a bigger picture.
They may not be aware of it. That is the thing, because people are afraid they'll get fired. I mean, that the manager would get back to them.
Well, and that says something about the company. If people are afraid to say something, that there says something.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's easy. I mean, they just list all these great core values, you know, but even managed to get all these awards, but one's experience may be very different.
Yeah, most people leave their jobs because they don't like their manager. That's what it boils down to. So how well you get along with your manager,
Yeah.
and, you know, do you enjoy going to work? I mean, when I've gone, you know, when I was working, it was always a matter of, I was excited about going for the most part. And, you know, there was only one job really that I can think of that it was just like, I did not like going. And after 90 days, I left. I said, thanks, I'm leaving. You know, this isn't for me. And because they just didn't share the values, they didn't share the culture that I was willing to put up with. Other questions? Anybody else have any questions for Walt?
I've got one, but it's a little bit, maybe a little bit on the side that I'm not sure if it's a good question to ask, but I was with a company as a sales rep, and I realized how the culture was very woke, and which is a, you know, kind of a political thing, but I'm not woke. And so it was kind of swimming in the waters of you know, going along with some of these philosophies that were very, to me, not appropriate, but also just having to deal with, you know, people's gender identity and diversity and inclusion, such to the fact about seeing people through like their skin color or something like that. I just didn't understand or like those kind of things. And so I was wondering if there was a comment on how to handle something like that.
You have to decide whether you tolerate that. You can start making the change and adapt to it, or find something else. Well, I think it's pretty simple. You know, the problem today, out of the 400,000 problems today, is that it's come down to everything's right or wrong. If you're not this, then you're wrong. You're bad. You're terrible. It's not like we don't appreciate differences. We really just don't, you know. So if you want to be called this, fine, I'll call you that. It's not a big deal. But at the same time, we don't really like being told how to think, what to think, but we ought to consider open-mindedness. We ought to consider change. Ought to look at it. A young company probably will have more than another. So it's just how you can live with that or adapt to that. Or is it going, if you go to work and you're bothered about it every day, then you know you got an answer right away. But yeah, there's a lot of people believe differently than I do, and it's okay. You don't have to believe the way I do. But if we can just respect one another, well, I don't want to get into all solutions to the world's problems, but you know, debate doesn't help anybody. Dialogue does. So, what do you think?
Oh, I'm really good about liking to get along with people, and our differences sometimes are a good eye opener to a different way of thinking, and I'm okay with that. It's an expansion kind of a thing. It's just like what you just said, when that was a very good way of putting it. If you don't think this way, then you're a bad person. Versus just
Yeah.
don't go that, that opinion.
I'm asking a question in the grocery store and this person says this, and I said, "Thank you, sir." And the person responds, "I am not a man." My initial thought was, you could have fooled me, but I didn't think that was the right thing to say. So I apologized. I'm sorry, and just went on.
I think the statistic that you showed earlier about 35% of US workers said they would pass on the perfect job if the company culture wasn't a good fit. And we said that that number is really too low. And I think that's very true. I think you go through job search, you spend, 6 months, 9 months, a year, whatever it is, looking for a job. When you get that first job offer, you're ready to go back to work. And I think that people don't really evaluate their culture. And I think it makes a difference. I think it makes a big difference, especially at the beginning, that you're ready to go back to work and you'll just take the job. And I think that's what a lot of job seekers do. If they don't really evaluate, but I think if they would spend the time to stop and evaluate a little bit about their values and their culture, and use the handout that we'll send out this afternoon with a lot of these web links to be able to go check on companies' cultures, go target the companies that have the culture that you like, that you want, that you're looking for. I think it'll be a lot more effective, and people can be more effective in their job search and maybe try to find the kind of job. I think at this point, people will take the first job they get offered because they've been out for 6 months and they go, I got to take this.
At least if you know the culture and you take it, then you know what you're getting into. All right, when you make that, so I'd rather you make that decision than one that's where I don't know what the culture is and then just get into it. So yeah, you might have to make that decision. So
Yeah, if you're going to go work for a larger company, that information will be out there on the web probably, but Fortune 500 companies are going to be listed, but everybody from 501 down to 2,694,000, that company there, you're not going to know the culture unless you ask those right questions, unless you ask the questions to find out how things work.
Toyota and Amazon are pretty good about describing their culture on their website. So Amazon has its 16 leadership principles when everybody's a leader, and so if you had those pretty much memorized or understood, you can be able to discuss any one of them in an interview. That would be pretty important. But the question is, do they fit you? Is that the right type of place for you? I hope you can see that of all the things that you have to do, one of the things that's going to help you be more effective is finding out your culture, finding out their culture before you do a lot of other work. Right. So as you're vetting and you're finding companies or that sort of thing. So if you're familiar with reference solutions, you can find companies with a lot of different parameters. Mike and is it Pete now that give the reference solutions things about how to find companies. And then you said, now how to find them, you start vetting them. This is one of the things at the top of your list that I suggest you vet at a company, because if it doesn't match, I would go to the next company, right?
Right. We have time for one more question. Anybody else have a question for Walt before we end?
Walt, the thought comes to me about where in the interview process do you start asking these questions and expecting a serious discussion? Thinking of first interview frequently is kind of an exploratory interview, may happen with a recruiter or an outside recruiter. And a lot of that is just to figure out whether what kind of goes on. You might not be able to get good answers out of that. Second, third interviews, if these move forward, that's just kind of where do you see the right time for timing on these sorts of things to get appropriate responses?
I like your question, Glenn. A lot of it depends on the knowledge of the interviewer because some people don't know the answers. A recruiter might not have any ideas. They might be the person that's just taking down responses, checking requirements and handing it off to somebody and they can't answer a thing, right? So it depends on that. Secondly, I've always suggested 2 questions at the end of the first response in a job interview. And one of them is, what are the top 3 characteristics for a person to be successful in this role? That's an I am. That's a culture question. And is there an I am fit? Are you looking for a person that looks like this? Do I look like that? Does it match? And then we can talk about it when they give us a response to it. And I like asking each interviewer that question because marketing has one answer, operations has another, sales has another, IT has another, they all might have some different answers. So I suggest it right up front, but it's with the idea that the person does have knowledge about that. So, and I would think when appropriate, there are questions that can come up with, let's say they ask you a question about, and it's a team question. When you had a difficult member of a team, I would suggest that we ask a question at the end of that to say, well, and then here's your value question about collaboration and teamwork. And you could then ask, well, what's going on with the team today? How's the team working together today? How's the interaction with the team and other departments? Those topics. So when they bring it up, that's a good opportunity to follow up. But you might bring them up, if the hiring manager is the first person you talk to, that's one thing. And if the recruiter that doesn't know anything is that's another thing. So I would bring them up when you feel it's appropriate. I would trust your judgment on when you think it's appropriate to ask those questions. But have them in your mind and have them in there. So let me find the opportunities. Find out as much as you can early on. What do you think?
Glenn, I think that was a great question. Thank you. I mean, that's always a toughie. You have a comment?
Prompted by your comment too, Walt, about, PTO. That's not an appropriate first interview question unless you're pretty sure that the recruiter is going to make a job offer or something like, but it's not really an appropriate first interview question.
Right.
It just seemed to me that trying to delve too deeply into the company culture at the first interview, which could be anywhere from a 15 to 30 minute just touchy-feely kind of thing, is maybe not the right place to bring that up. But you don't want to wait too long to get to it, because then that tends to set up inappropriate expectations or unreasonable expectations for later on.
So hopefully we try to find this information out before we get into the interviews. Now, it's not always possible. I mean, you might get interviews without being able to do that. And I know Mark and I both say that the me questions are kind of risky questions when you ask in an interview. It's all about me. What kind of vacation do you have? Do you have education? Can I get learning? Can I do this? Can I do that? All that stuff. Because the interviewer looks at you and says, I didn't hire you to, give all this stuff to you. I'm hiring you to accomplish these things. So we suggest we avoid the me questions.
All right. Well, Walt, thank you very much. Great presentation. A lot of great information.
Can I ask a question? For those of you, after you get the handout and you go through it, I would appreciate your feedback on the value of what this presentation is about. Any suggestions and options that you might have. So I'm looking and saying, what do I do with this? One is I just create a handout and put it on Jeff's resource page and stop the presentation, or is the presentation worthwhile? I'd just like to know your feelings about it. I would appreciate just send me an email to my walt_glass@yahoo.com. I'll take it for that one to see what you think.
Yeah, I'll put Walt's email address in the email I put out this afternoon so that you can reach out to him and let him know. This is the very first time that he's presented this information. I saw it a few days ago when we were going over it, and I mean, it's jam-packed full of information. That's why I think the handout's so very, very important to go back. So take a look. Please give Walt feedback. I think it was excellent. I mean, I haven't heard this kind of presentation. I've been doing this for 13 years. This is the first time I've heard somebody really talk about values and culture, about how important that is, and going into the detail that Walt did. So I really appreciate the time and effort that Walt put into this today.
Thank you, Walt.
All right, so let's see here. So coming up next week, we're going to hear from Kurt Vondermatter. He's a retained search consultant. He's going to talk about what he sees in the job market, looking at his crystal ball, what his customers are telling him. Should be a very interesting presentation next Friday also. Let's see here. If you have not put your 30-second introductions into the Zoom chat window, please do so, because this is the only way you're going to get the handouts, the only way I know you were here today. So please put your information in the chat window, and we will make sure that you get the handout here. I'll get it out here in the next hour, hour and a half or so. All right, Career DFW, Career USA, we're putting on training 4 days a week. Next Tuesday, Ruth Lipsky will be with us for LinkedIn Tuesdays to talk about how to drive recruiters to your LinkedIn profile. On Wednesday, practice interview team. Hopefully you'll be able to watch an actual practice interview. I know things have been going slow at the pit crew, but if you'd like to schedule your own interview, just go to dallaspitcrew.com and you'll get information there on how you can do that. Next Thursday, being the 4th Thursday of the month, we're going to talk all about networking. Our speaker is going to be Jay Frasero. He has a really jam-packed information, jam-packed full of really good things about how he networks. He's very, he lays out step by step what he does and how he likes to do. So you can join us next Thursday at 1 o'clock. This session has been recorded. It will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel. Please follow us on Facebook. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'd really appreciate it. On the YouTube channel, click on playlist where you see that green arrow. Otherwise, you'll see almost 400 videos. And then pick the subject, the title, the playlist that you want. And then down below, don't click on the video, but the bottom, click on View Full Playlist where that red arrow is, and up will come a list of the dates and the titles that we talked about in each session, and you can go and get that information and go back and watch any of these at your convenience. So thank you very much for joining us today, everybody. Have a great weekend. Walt, once again, thank you very much for your time. And I'm looking forward to rain and cooler weather in the DFW area for the next 7 days. So have a great weekend.